October 23, 1951. 1 a.m., Kadena Air Base, Okinawa. The wake-up call cuts through the darkness. 9 crews of the 307th Bombardment Wing roll from their bunks. Outside, on the tarmac, 9 Boeing B-29 Superfortresses wait under floodlights. Each aircraft carries 20,000 pounds of bombs. Their target, Namsi Airfield, 30 miles south of the Yalu River. Captain Clarence Fogler climbs into the lead aircraft. He's a World War II veteran. He survived the worst B-24 missions over Europe. Around him, younger crewmen check their positions. The tail gunner loads belts into his twin 50-caliber machine guns. The bombardier studies his charts. By 5 a.m., engines are turning. The 4 Wright R-3350 radials on each Superfortress roar to life in clouds of blue smoke. The takeoff is agonizingly slow. The runway seems to run out before the wheels leave concrete. At 300 miles per hour, the formation climbs into darkness. The B-29 was the weapon that ended World War II. It burned Japanese cities to ash. Its crews shot down hundreds of enemy fighters. But that war ended 6 years ago. Now, in the autumn of 1951, the Silver bombers face something their designers never imagined. Swept-wing jets that climb at twice their speed. Cannon that tear through aluminum like paper. Soviet pilots who learned their trade fighting the Luftwaffe. The ground war in Korea has stalemated at the 38th parallel. Truce talks drag on at Panmunjom. In the air, the United Nations needs to cut supply lines running from Manchuria into North Korea. New airfields are sprouting along the Yalu. If completed, they'll push the communist jet umbrella south, threatening everything below. The B-29s must stop construction. But to reach these targets, they must enter a wedge of sky between the Chongchon River and the Yalu. American pilots call it MiG Alley. 400 miles to the north, Soviet pilots wake in darkness at Antung Air Base. The base sits on the Manchurian side of the Yalu, safely across the border, beyond the reach of UN bombs. Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Smorchkov briefs his regiment. Smorchkov is a veteran. He knows what the B-29s are coming for. His orders are clear. Ignore the fighter escorts. Go straight for the bombers. 56 Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-15 fighters are fueled and armed. Each carries one 37mm NR-37 cannon and two 23mm NR-23 cannons. The MiG-15 was designed for one purpose: to kill American bombers. It can climb to 45,000 feet. Its swept wings slice through transonic speeds. Against the straight-winged F-80 Shooting Stars the Americans flew in 1950, it was untouchable. Even against the new F-86 Sabres, it holds advantages in climb rate, ceiling, and raw firepower. By dawn, Fogler's formation crosses the Korean coast. Navigator Fred Meyer checks his plot. Namsi Airfield lies ahead, marked on his chart with red ink. The weather is clear. Unlimited visibility. Not good. Behind the B-29s, 34 F-86 Sabres from the 4th Fighter Interceptor Wing fly top cover. 55 F-84 Thunderjets fly close escort. Nearly 200 aircraft converge on a single point. At 10 a.m., the formation approaches Namsi. Anti-aircraft fire erupts. Radar-directed flak bursts in black flowers at 20,000 feet. The B-29s hold formation. 2 Superfortresses take damage. Shell fragments punch through aluminum. Then, from above, the MiGs come. Smorchkov leads his formation in a diving attack. The silver B-29s fill his gun sight. He closes to 300 meters. The MiG's cannons hammer. The 37mm shells are devastating. A single hit can sever a wing spar. The 23mm rounds stream in pairs. The ballistics are mismatched. Some American pilots will watch 23mm shells pass overhead, while 37mm rounds fly beneath. But when they connect, the results are catastrophic. 3 B-29s go down over the target. Engines explode in orange fireballs, wings fold, men bail out at 14,000 feet, spinning through flak bursts. Another 3 superfortresses take critical damage. They limp toward the coast, trailing smoke, hydraulic fluid streaming from shattered lines. For the Sabre pilots, the battle is chaos. The MiGs flash through the formation at closing speeds approaching 1,300 miles per hour. At that velocity, a pilot has seconds to identify, decide, engage. The F-86 pilots try to intercept, but the Soviet fighters refuse the dogfight. They make slashing attacks on the bombers, then zoom climb back to altitude, using their superior acceleration. When Sabres do engage, the MiG pilots brake hard, diving toward the Yalu. They know the rules. American fighters are forbidden to cross the river into Manchuria. The Chinese border is sanctuary. The F-84 Thunderjets, slower and less maneuverable, are helpless. 2 take fatal damage. Inside the damaged B-29s, crew members fight to keep their aircraft flying. Control cables are severed. Hydraulic systems fail. Engines burn. Some pilots nurse crippled superfortresses toward emergency strips in South Korea. Others ditch in the Yellow Sea. One bomber makes it to Taegu, a forward base, and belly lands on the runway. The aircraft never flies again. Photographs taken after the battle show the B-29's aluminum skin, shredded like cloth. Entire sections of fuselage torn away. By noon, the battle ends. The Americans will call this day Black Tuesday. The statistics are brutal. Of 9 B-29s that attacked Namsi, only 1 escapes serious damage. 6 bombers are destroyed outright or damaged beyond repair. 27 airmen are dead. 20 more are wounded. 8 become prisoners of war. In percentage terms, Black Tuesday represents the worst loss rate of any major American bombing mission in any war. The strategic implications are immediate. Within days, the Far East Air Forces cancels all daylight B-29 precision bombing missions over MiG Alley. From November 1951 forward, superfortresses fly only at night, relying on radar for targeting. The age of the daylight heavy bomber, the weapon system that won World War II, ends in the skies over North Korea. But the story of MiG Alley began months earlier. On December 17, 1950, 6 F-86 Sabres from the 4th Fighter Interceptor Wing encountered Soviet MiG-15 for the first time. It was the first dogfight between swept-wing jet fighters in history. Lieutenant Colonel Bruce Hinton scored the first Sabre kill. By year's end, the F-86 had shot down 8 MiGs, but then the Chinese offensive drove UN forces south. Kimpo Air Base was overrun. The Sabres withdrew to Japan beyond combat range. For 2 months, the Communists owned the sky. In March 1951, the Sabres returned to Korea, operating from Kimpo and Suwon. They were outnumbered. The Soviets and Chinese had more than 400 MiG-15s in theater. The Americans had fewer than 50 Sabres. Yet these few squadrons seized air superiority and never relinquished it. How? The answer lies not in technology, but in pilots and doctrine. The early F-86A was marginally faster than the MiG-15 in level flight and could outdive it. The Sabre rolled better. Its turn radius was slightly tighter, but the MiG climbed faster, accelerated harder, operated at higher altitudes. In terms of raw performance, the aircraft were nearly matched. The decisive factor was the men in the cockpit. In April 1951, the Soviet 64th Fighter Aviation Corps deployed to Manchuria. These were not rookies, they were World War II veterans, men who fought the Luftwaffe over Stalingrad and Kursk. The 324th Fighter Aviation Division was commanded by Colonel Ivan Kozhedub. the top Soviet ace of the war, with 62 kills. Captain Nikolai Sutyagin arrived with the 17th Fighter Aviation Regiment. Captain Yevgeny Pepelyaev commanded the 196th Fighter Aviation Regiment. These pilots brought a decade of combat experience. American pilots quickly noticed the difference. The new MiG pilots flew with aggression and precision. They used coordinated tactics. One element would bait the Sabres into a climb, while another section dove from above. They exploited the MiG's superior climb rate mercilessly. F-86 pilots began calling these skilled adversaries Honchos, from the Japanese word for boss. The nickname was respectful. These were dangerous opponents. From April 1951 to January 1952, the Honchos dominated MiG Alley. Soviet records claim 142 UN aircraft destroyed against 68 MiG losses, a 2-to-1 kill ratio. American claims are different, but the impact is undeniable. B-29 losses mount. Fighter-bomber missions are disrupted. The UN's air interdiction campaign stalls. During this period, more than 30 Soviet pilots become aces. Sutyagin claims 22 victories, making him the highest-scoring pilot of the war on either side. Pepelyaev is credited with 19. Major Lev Shchukin downed 17 UN aircraft. These men are skilled hunters. They understand energy management, deflection shooting, mutual support. They've survived the Eastern Front. Korea is their second war. But the Americans adapt. F-86 pilots develop tactics to counter the MiG's advantages. They learn to fight in the vertical, using dive speed to offset the MiG's climb rate. They perfect the fluid four formation, 2 pairs of fighters, mutually supporting, with defined roles for lead and wingman. They exploit the Sabre's superior gun sight. The A1CM and A4 radar ranging sights are far more sophisticated than the MiG's World War II-era gyroscopic sight. In a high-speed snapshot, the Sabre pilot has a significant edge. The Americans also have one crucial advantage the Soviets lack: anti-G suits. At jet speeds, dogfights generate crushing G forces. Blood drains from the brain, vision tunnels, pilots black out. The Sabre's G-suit, a system of inflatable bladders that compress the legs and abdomen, helps maintain blood pressure. Soviet pilots have no equivalent. In sustained turning fights, this matters. Technology evolves. In June 1952, the first F-86F Sabres with solid leading-edge wings reached Korea. The earlier F-86A and F-86E models used automatic leading-edge slats that deployed at low speeds to prevent stalls. But the slats cause control problems at high speeds. The F-86F replaces them with a fixed, hard wing optimized for transonic performance. The result is an aircraft that matches the MiG-15 at altitude. The playing field levels. Simultaneously, the Soviet rotation system brings change. In early 1952, the experienced Honcho pilots complete their tours and return to the Soviet Union. Replacement pilots are less skilled. Chinese and North Korean pilots, despite training, lack the combat experience of their Soviet predecessors. The tide shifts. American pilots notice immediately. The aggressive, coordinated attacks diminish. MiGs are easier to engage, slower to react. Kill ratios skew heavily in favor of the Sabres. By August 1952, the United Nations holds clear air superiority over MiG Alley. That month alone, 63 MiGs go down for 9 Sabre losses. The new F-86F is a key factor, but pilot experience is equally important. American aces emerge. Captain Joseph McConnell becomes the first jet double ace, downing 16 MiGs. On one mission, flying as wingman to future astronaut Major John Glenn, he shoots down 3 in a single day. Major James Jabara, who became the world's first jet versus jet ace in May 1951, finishes the war with 15 kills. Captain Manuel Fernandez claims 14.5. These men are aggressive, skilled, and relentless. They hunt MiGs with the same intensity the Soviet Honchos brought a year earlier. Yet even in 1952, individual Soviet pilots remained formidable. Captain Nikolai Ivanov arrives in June 1952 with the 726th Fighter Aviation Regiment. He's a World War II ace with 6 German kills. In Korea, he downed 6 more American aircraft, including 3 F-86. Seaman Federets claims 8 victories. These are not easy opponents. They simply lacked the numerical and institutional support the Honchos enjoyed. The peak of the air war occurs in summer 1953. On June 30th, 16 MiGs are shot down in a single day, a record. On July 22nd, Second Lieutenant Sam Young, flying wingman to Major John Glenn, scores the final MiG kill of the war. 5 days later, the armistice is signed. The final accounting is contentious. American sources claim 792 MiG-15s destroyed in air-to-air combat, mostly by F-86s, for 78 Sabres lost. This produces a 10-to-1 kill ratio. Soviet and Chinese records dispute these numbers. More recent scholarship, examining claims against confirmed losses, suggests the actual ratio is closer to 1.8 to 1 overall, and approximately 1.3 to 1:1 when comparing Sabres against MiGs flown by Soviet pilots. The truth likely falls between propaganda and revision. What's undeniable is this. During the Honcho period of 1951, when skilled Soviet veterans flew the MiG-15, the air war was fiercely competitive. From 1952 onward, when less experienced pilots replaced them, the Sabres dominated. The legacy of MiG Alley extends beyond statistics. This was the first war where jet fought jet in sustained combat. The tactical lessons shaped air doctrine for decades. The importance of training, experience, and situational awareness was reaffirmed. Technology mattered, but pilot skill mattered more. The battles also revealed the limitations of both aircraft. The F-86 was designed as a dogfighter, optimized for turning combat. The MiG-15 was designed as a point defense interceptor, optimized for climbing to altitude and destroying bombers. Each excelled in its intended role. The Sabre won most dogfights. The MiG killed B-29s so effectively that it drove the American heavy bomber from the daytime sky. Frederick Bless, an F-86 ace with 9 kills, wrote a manual after the war titled "No Guts, No Glory." It's still studied. The tactical principles he codified, aggressive pursuit, mutual support, energy management, remain relevant. The MiG Alley battles proved that jet combat demanded new thinking. Piston engine tactics didn't translate. Speed, altitude, and G-forces created an environment where decisions had to be made in seconds, not minutes. Pilots needed not just skill, but exceptional physical conditioning and mental processing speed. For the airmen who fought there, MiG Alley was a crucible. Temperatures at altitude reached 40 below zero. Oxygen systems sometimes failed. G-forces caused blackouts. Bailouts over North Korea meant probable capture. Many men never returned. More than 30 American Sabre pilots are still missing, their aircraft lost over enemy territory, their fates unknown. For Soviet pilots, the stakes were equally high. They flew under strict orders to avoid UN-controlled territory. If shot down and captured, their presence would expose Soviet involvement. Lieutenant Yevgeny Stelmach, shot down during a B-29 attack in May 1951, committed suicide with his pistol rather than face capture. The cold arithmetic of the air war hides these individual costs. The battles over MiG Alley also highlighted a disturbing strategic reality. The F-86 Sabre, America's best fighter, could barely protect the B-29 America's strategic bomber. The bomber's 300-mile-per-hour cruising speed was too slow. Its 50-caliber machine guns were insufficient against cannon-armed jets. The MiG-15's 37mm and 23mm weapons inflicted catastrophic damage. A single pass could cripple a superfortress. Even with fighter escort, even with numerical superiority in the escort force, the B-29 couldn't survive in contested airspace during daylight. Black Tuesday proved this beyond argument. The lesson was stark. The era of the manned heavy bomber operating in defended airspace was ending. Future conflicts would require different solutions: electronic warfare, standoff weapons, or bombers fast enough to evade interception. 60 miles south of the Yalu, at Kimpo and Suwon, the Sabre pilots returned from each mission to debrief, to rest, to fly again the next day. They flew approximately 90-minute missions, 30 minutes to MiG Alley on external drop tanks, 20 minutes in the combat zone if fuel allowed, then the return flight on internal fuel. The operational tempo was relentless. Pilots flew combat sorties day after day, accumulating stress and fatigue. Some completed 100 missions. Some didn't complete 10. In between missions, they maintained the mythology of the fighter pilot: confident, aggressive, unshakable. But in the cockpit, at 40,000 feet, alone in the sky, every pilot knew the truth. One mistake, one moment of inattention, one mechanical failure, and the Yellow Sea or a POW camp awaited. The air war over MiG Alley was, in the end, a microcosm of the larger Korean conflict, brutal, inconclusive, and largely forgotten. No territory changed hands permanently. No decisive victory was achieved. The armistice in July 1953 simply stopped the fighting. The war technically never ended. No peace treaty was ever signed. But in those 3 years, in that narrow corridor of sky between the Chongchon and the Yalu, history turned. Jet combat emerged as the dominant form of aerial warfare. The doctrine and tactics forged over MiG Alley influenced conflicts from Vietnam to the Gulf. The men who flew there, American, Soviet, Chinese, North Korean, wrote the manual for modern air combat with their lives and their skill. On a crisp October morning in 1951, when 9 B-29s lifted from Okinawa bound for Namsi, they carried with them the confidence of World War II. They had burned cities. They had ended empires. But the world had changed. The swept-wing jet had arrived. The age of the superfortress was over. The age of the Sabre and the MiG had begun. And in the cold, thin air above North Korea, the future of air combat was written in contrails and cannon fire.